You just want me to roll in?
Yeah.
Rolling.
All right.
Dog is rolling.
Rawhide.
You're listening to The Janchi Show, hosted by 3 Korean American adoptees diving headfirst into what it means to be adopted, Korean American, and more. And now, here's your hosts, Nathan, Patrick, and KJ.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to The Janchi Show. I am just steamrolling Nathan. I, being KJ, your primary host of The Janchi Show, friend and dictator of the podcast.
Oh, now you're just stealing people's titles, too.
I am. You can
I
call
see
me,
it happily.
You can call me the thief. With me, as always, is Nathan and Patrick and
St. Patrick Armstrong.
R Nathan and Patrick. That's how English works. Plural verbs for plural nouns. How are you guys?
Good. St. Patty's Day. Not that that really means anything, but
I mean, I'm sure it means something to some people somewhere. It doesn't mean that much to me personally.
sure. I used to have a green beer every once in a while, and that was probably about it.
Oh yeah,
Tried to
that's
avoid
a
getting
thing.
pinched.
I will say that's a benefit of running remote is only my wife will pinch me.
If you're lucky.
What?
Sorry.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, no, I didn't know. I started to jokingly pinch my kids this morning too, and then I was thinking, I don't want. Am I bullying them by doing that? I shouldn't do this.
You will conform to the St. Patty's Day tradition.
I know. I'm like, this is probably a bad tradition. I shouldn't teach them that because now they're going to go pinch some kid and get in trouble. So I stopped.
No pinching.
Well, we are the Janchi Show. Thank you for everyone tuning in. You guys look like you guys just got back from Austin, so I know you guys are.
I mean, it's been 48 hours, and I'm
I was
still.
going to say, that was like 2 days ago.
Yeah. Well, then
1 day
maybe
ago? I guess.
I'm
I don't know.
dragging.
You guys look a little dragon. That's all.
Yeah,
I do look like a dragon.
even though it's the year of the ox. Nathan, what does Janchi mean, and why do we call ourselves the Janchi Show?
We are taking the word as feast and celebrate. I guess that's how we are defining it. And we are celebrating our Korean adoption heritage and all that goes along with it. All the fun stories and sometimes the not so fun stories and the culture and the food and all the stuff.
I do know. I
We
am
know
part of
now.
the show.
You know.
We know now.
know.
And if you don't know, now you know.
But yeah, we are today doing a solo. What are you guys up for? I know there's been a lot in the media lately.
Technically, we're never doing a solo because there's 3 of us. I think we should start calling it trios.
Sorry, do you want to call it we're going to switch the name
Nice,
to
the
trio.
Janchi Trio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Trio.
From the Janchi Boys to the Feisty Boys to the Janchi Trio.
Then why did we start calling it solo? Whose idea was that?
It was probably mine. Maybe it was Patrick's. I don't know. Patrick's the loudest, so I'm gonna go ahead and give him that idea.
I'll take it.
Nice.
And I'm going to take charge of changing it up again.
Patrick's being a cool boy and sticking a toothpick in his mouth. And so, listeners, I just want you to honk your horns every time you feel like he has it in his mouth and then when he takes it out. So,
I wonder how many people listen while they're driving.
probably not that many because probably a lot of them are not driving that much.
I don't know. I think restrictions are lightening up now, so people
Yeah,
are back to
but
work.
does that mean that their workplaces are like, come back to us? Or like, nah, just stay remote?
No, some are, some aren't. I don't know.
All right. Well, throw whatever you're folding down on the ground if you are currently working fully remote still, because you're probably doing laundry. I don't know. Or
Working out, as we found out. Some people run and listen to our show.
oh yeah, or cooking maybe.
Yeah, so
I don't know. If you're living your life, do a thing that represents what you're doing. If you're listening to the show, is that a good call to action?
I think so.
Just basically do anything except tell us what you're doing. We don't want to hear from you.
We don't want to know.
We
Unless you leave
sound
us a
like we're
voicemail.
begging you to pay attention to us by having a podcast. It's fine.
This is the worst intro ever.
You're the worst intro ever. Gosh, if you think this is bad, then you take the reins and you make it a better intro, Nathan. Yeah. It's your show. Okay,
I tried to ask what you guys wanted to do. I was talking about celebrating, and then I don't know. And now we're going off on random tangents.
No, we already had a plan in place. We know what we're talking about, and then you were just like, yeah, and we're celebrating. Full stop. Come on, man. There's no handoff. Is this your first podcast?
Pumping the brakes.
I don't know how to hand it off on a topic like this.
Okay, here's how it goes. Ready? We're gonna knock it out of the park into a very different game.
That was pretty good. It's a little jarring into the baseball sound, but
well, sometimes when you knock a ball out of the park, it doesn't know that it just left Wrigley Field and landed in the streets and got run over by a semi. Okay, it was just like it just knows that it was on a trajectory.
The streets that it would be, the streets that ball would land in would not have any semis on it. Just
okay, well, you don't know that.
I do know that.
Well,
because there's no semis that drive in those streets.
Everything that I know about baseball comes from the Sandlot. So
the natural.
That's all
in
a
cornfield. That's everything I know.
We could talk about it, but not today. Not today.
Wait, talking about baseball? Because
we talk about baseball.
I'm gonna quit the podcast.
You're gonna quit the podcast?
If we talk about baseball, yeah.
If we talk about football, I'm quitting the podcast.
Which football?
Not American. The real football.
All right.
Ooh. No, I'm just kidding. I like real football too.
Yeah.
I think it's a hot take to not like baseball. Actually, I don't really think that's a hot take. I think it's pretty common.
The only thing that's more boring to me than baseball is golf.
Oh, now I'm out.
There's some fun golf stuff that happens.
Yeah. Not watching it, but playing it.
Nah, the only golf that I want to play is Top Golf.
Yeah.
Top golf is fun.
And mini golf. Come on. Mini golf's fun.
It's all right.
You ever been duck pin bowling?
What?
What is that?
So it's bowling, but it's like basically miniaturized, and you're using smaller balls like this big. The lane is about half the length and width, and the ball or the pins are on strings, and so you're just kind of chucking the ball down.
So you
so you can do it like it's just like you have more lanes. It's I don't know. It's fun. Huh. I did it for the first time the week of my birthday. It was a good time.
I did something similar in Canada. It was like a small ball kind of bowling thing.
The closest I get to competitive throwing is throwing axes. So no,
I like doing that too. That's fun. The knives or the little stars. I don't know if Ninja Star is derogatory, but that's what we were calling them at the thing.
I mean, I can't.
They're shurikens, I guess.
They're just
shuriken.
Yeah, they're just like throwing stars. I think
throwing star. There we go.
I was like, I don't know who else uses them besides ninjas, and I also don't know if only ninjas
boys
use them.
Well, they use them at
every ninja's got to start somewhere.
That's true.
Trust me, I got one, and I used to try to throw that thing and stick it in a tree. Instead, it bounced off, almost hitting me many times. So,
dude, it's all on the wrist.
Wow,
you got to get that wrist action.
No, it's because I was afraid to make it sharp because of those.
Well, then it's never going to stick in the tree.
Well, yeah, but as a kid, you don't think that. You think which one you want to do. Do you want to get hit with the rebound or, yeah?
I'll say you were playing it safe even as a child, because I think as a child, most children would want to make it as sharp as possible.
Yeah,
they're like, this isn't sticking. I need it to stick.
I shot my eye out.
I was a little safe as a kid, I think.
I threw my eye out. Is that what you'd say?
Yeah, you'll shoot your eye out.
All right. Well, speaking of safety and other stuff.
And other stuff not related to safety.
Speaking about safety and other things, I think one of the reasons that we are touching on multiple different topics is so we can avoid talking about what we really came here to talk about today, which is probably something you've seen.
Food. I'm just kidding.
Many people talking about recently, as well as the past 2 years, and that is the ongoing violence towards Asian bodies. We, as of the release of this episode, we're just 1 week removed from the 1 year anniversary of the Atlanta Spa massacres, or the Atlanta Spa shootings, I guess. That happened on March 16th, 2021, in which 8 people were killed, 7 women, 6 of whom were of Asian descent. And Well, I guess I'll say that KJ and I had the opportunity to go to South by Southwest and sit in on the Dear Asian Americans panel that our producer Jerry was able to host. And I think that's why this is really obviously still fresh in my mind. Atlanta was obviously going to be fresh in my mind anyway. But that panel was titled Dear Asian Americans, What Now? Wait, what now? Is that right? Okay. We were getting mixed up on that specific subtitle.
A week later, we've actually already been to the event, and we're still like, wait, what is it called?
Exactly. Oh yeah, that did happen last episode.
Jerry's
Anyways,
you get
48 hours ago. It's okay. That's right.
Anyways, the whole crux of the conversation that Jerry had with his panelists Dion Lim, Nidia Han, and Muna Husseini was a really incredible panel. But they were talking about where we are now in relation to, or in where are we at in terms of this ongoing violence towards our community, the people that look like us. Are we in a better place? Are we in a worse place? Are we in the same place? And I think that it was really enlightening for me because, this is something I think about almost every day. And I feel like, especially over the last 3 weeks now, as of this recording, it seems like we haven't gotten any better. It seems like we are in a worse place, to be honest. In the last 3 months alone, high profile murders like that of Michelle Go, Christina Lee. And then 2 Mondays ago, we saw a video released of a 67-year-old woman being attacked in the foyer of her apartment complex, getting punched 125 times, stomped on 7 times. And those things really make it seem like we're not in a better place, unfortunately. And I think I mean, everybody's talking about it. I don't think we are going to necessarily shed new light, but I think it is important for us to talk about it, especially in relation to us as adoptees and still being Asian on the outside, as well as Asian on the inside, but Asian on the outside in the fact that we still have to worry about our own safety. And I think that's a question that I've been asking, just like, when are we going to be safe? When are we allowed to feel safety? And so I guess my question to start off as this, or to kick off the conversation, is I want to ask you both the same thing that they were asking at the panel. Where do you feel like we're at, just in your own personal experience? And then I guess for you personally, and then as a community, as a society as a whole. And because I just saw KJ, Nathan, I'll kick it to you. What do you think? Where do you feel like we're at?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very curious to hear what you did here at the panel, and if you got anything good out of it.
Well, we signed an NDA, so we're not allowed to talk about it.
It's all secret. You can't tell me. I had to pay the ticket. Yeah, I mean, after hearing those stories, and I mean, I've heard those unfortunate incidents in the news, and of course the statistics of 11,000, anti-Asian hate crimes since 2020. A lot of stuff is still happening. A lot of things are still not getting better. I mean, I'm scared, and I have the knowledge, knowing that I am not a woman, and a lot of those crimes are actually happening to Asian women more. And so that's something that scares me, mainly for my wife and my daughter when she gets older, if these things are still happening. And so that's why I would, look to, getting this change, going, and what I can do and what others can do, because I have no clue. I mean, I'm kind of still in a bubble. I'm still in my little COVID bubble, sitting at home, not really going out. Occasionally I do, but it's still minimal places. So, but unfortunately, there's a lot of people that do have to go out, go to work, or, go to places. And yeah, I'm sad for them. If they're living in fear, or if they're in areas that, may have incidents like this happening. So, yeah, it's sad. I don't know.
So I have a follow up to, and we can cut this if you don't feel comfortable answering, or if or what for whatever reason. But do you and Allison have you had any conversations even in the last year, even the last couple weeks, just about everything that's been going on, or is that something that's just like, or I don't know, how do you all navigate that conversation if you want to share that, obviously?
We don't really talk about it that much, just because, like I said, we don't go out that often, so
Sure.
We haven't really felt it as a immediate threat to our family specifically. So we haven't discussed like plans or things like that. But I do recall back in the day when she would go out sometimes by herself, when she was in nursing school, or even when she was working. This was actually during the pandemic. She was working, and there was some incidents where she was having a few, I wouldn't say altercations, but she had some incidents that made both her and myself uncomfortable when I heard about them. And so I know things were happening. And I saw a statistic somewhere too that said within the last 2 years of this pandemic happening and everything, 1 in 2 women have had some sort of racism incident that has happened to them. And I don't know if that's a 100% factual thing, but I mean, again, I'm reading it off of a card on Instagram that I saw. So, but if it's that high, that's really scary. I mean, that's even though the racism could just be, racism, it's not an actual physical violent attack. It's still something that is, that could cause harm mentally, or is just something that just shouldn't be there.
Yeah, I think the toll that even a verbal abuse can take can be just as damaging. Can have lifelong effects. We wear scars from physical abuse on our bodies that heal in certain ways, but we also carry the scars of whatever verbal or emotional trauma that we experience, and we can't see those. And it's harder to define how those heal and how we heal from that. Yeah. So, and I definitely understand not talking about it as much, especially if you are staying within your bubble. You kind of isolate yourselves, and that in itself, even though it's more COVID precautions than necessarily like physical safety precautions, is a form of protection, of self-preservation, of survival. Mm-hmm. And so I appreciate you sharing that, because we never know. I don't feel like we've even talked about that even off air, so I appreciate that. What about you, KJ? I know we went to the panel and then you immediately took us to the airport. There was no in between time for us to kind of debrief or break down the conversations that had just taken place. Where do you feel like we're at, or like y'all are at personally, you and Sarah? And did anything from the panel specifically stick out to you about like where others think that we're at right now?
Yeah. So, personally, it was really great since Sarah was able to go with me down to Austin and hang out with you and with Jerry and see all of that and be in these Asian American spaces. A couple of dinners and then at the panel, and we went to Asians in Advertising meetup as well before Jerry's thing, and it was really good just because, like, I think seeing like our world is generally pretty white. I think by product of her being white and me being adopted, and that just being how it is. Also by product of like being so near the church for so long, and it was just interesting, like I don't know that Sarah has really experienced being in a space like that, like a intentional community gathering of Asian Americans. And so it was just nice to like on the talk back to talk with her about like what the 3 days in Austin has meant for her and for us. And so that was a really good conversation. But one of the things that I was struck by with the panel was I feel like at least for the most part, the speakers, and I get the sense that the more fair skinned or light skinned or whatever, the more light skinned you are, the more you may feel like it is kind of new. I don't know. There was like a sense of like, oh man, I can't believe this is happening to me. What can we do about it? Blah, 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 and rightly so. Like, I don't want to downplay what's happening to anyone individually. I don't want to downplay what's happening to Asians as a collective. But I do want to add the importance of understanding of, like, I think for the most part, or at least what I'm seeing, is a lot of East Asians who are freaking out and like waking up to what's happening and their Asianness, and that being minority status, right? And so on the one hand, it's really great to see more East Asians being loud about being a minority and being loud about pushing back against common stereotypes or whatever. On the other hand, there seems to me to be a lack of like learning and a lack of doing it, like exploring what materials already exist for what to do next. Even from within our own Asian American community, like 21 years ago, September 11th happened. And then I think that the South Asians were very keenly aware, and West Asians are very keenly aware of everything that's been happening and how to reckon with this, and how before 2001 maybe they would be like, oh yeah, I mean, like we've immigrated and we look different, but we're American and we do American things, and then it all flips on a dime, right? And so now a new subsection of Asian America is feeling that, and I feel like because of the privilege afforded to especially East Asians by their lighter skin or by their kind of white adjacency, if you will, there's more shock, and there's more like, not like, I guess it feels kind of like a slap to the face. Like, I feel like sometimes when I hear East Asians talk about what's happening, they feel like they got slapped in the face and like, how dare you? I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know. That's just that's my hot take. And so all that to say is I think that there's a lack of learning going on from the Black community, from the Latinx community, from our South Asian and West Asian community. You know what I mean? Like, that there are so many things that have already happened, so many things that we can intentionally learn from and continue to grow in. I know that we on the show and people that I'm connected to often talk about how we need to be intersectional in what we stand against, and we need to be intersectional in who we're standing for. But I think we need to be intersectional in our learning too, like to think that that the racism against Asians is categorically wholly different than the racism against Black people is maybe just a little short-sighted and unnecessarily walled off. Like, obviously it's different, but to think that we couldn't learn from the techniques of the Black communities has been using to push for change and fight for change, and to ignore the partnership is, yeah, it's just it just feels a little short-sighted. And I think actually that was some of what I experienced even at the panel, was like, because two of the presenters, well, three of the panelists were East Asian, and one of them was actually Muna is Muslim American, right? I don't know where she's like what her ethnicity is from, but like browner than the rest of the panelists, and had more history because she specifically referenced 9/11. It was just like it was like we were all like, oh my gosh, what's happening? And then she was like, oh, you're finally here? You're finally where I've been for 20 years? You know what I mean? And so I think that has been a thing that's really struck me in the past year, is in the past year, why have more maybe just East Asian Americans not learned about like this ongoing struggle? Like, why does our community still feel like we've just arrived at this, instead of being like, no, we've been a part of this for a long time? So, and I realize like it's not like I'm hanging out with every East Asian American in the world or all those things, but that's just kind of the sense that I have gotten from maybe the broader conversation and what's prevalent to me in the spaces that I'm in.
No, I think I 100% agree. And I think Nydia did bring up, well, that's one of the things I appreciated about what she had talked about was, this violence against our community is not new. And, she specifically referenced the Page Act of 1875, which excluded specifically Chinese women. But I think that was her response to, what can we do now? I think that was a question, or like, what can we do? And it's like, just like you said, we need to be learning, because this is not something new that's happened. And I think for a wide swath of Asian Americans specifically, we can, whether you're adopted, whether you're the children of immigrants, however you ended up in this country, I think at a certain point, just as American culture operates, is that it's been almost more convenient not to learn. And so when we're not even learning our own history, it makes it easier to not learn any of the other histories. Like you said, intersectional learning, like to learn about the indigenous people who were here before us, to learn about the transatlantic slave trade and how specifically Africans were displaced, taken from their homes, and how all of that, how slavery literally is the foundation for most of our institutions, and how all of that is all tied together in a way, in the sense that there is specifically a white supremacy overtone to everything that we are experiencing, everything that we're trying to combat. And I think that would, just like you said, when Muna shared her story about experiencing abuse and assault after 2001, after 9/11, I did feel like there was a certain bit of like almost shock value and it's like, that was 21 years ago. Like this is not new to any of us, but I think it's easy for specifically an overrepresented population. And I'm not saying East Asians are overrepresented by any means in any media, but as just a statistical number, or like in terms of coverage or whatever it might be, I think that's something that we see happening. And I think we hear a lot. I think even in the last couple of years, we've heard a lot about that, there are a lot of East Asians being attacked. But that doesn't mean that they're the only people. Like, that doesn't mean that defines what Asian is and that those are the people being attacked. There are a lot of South Asians, Southeast Asians, folks from, Pakistan, Middle Asia, those Middle Asian countries that are being attacked as well. And everybody has things going on back in their home countries too. And I think that's where we can also get better at learning about what's going on, learning about not only in the present, but what's happened in our histories. Because if we are going to be able to recognize and identify these issues, we have to be able to look into the past, look at the history of what's happened, and be just as aware, or be willing and knowledgeable and willing to engage in those conversations, in that history, as we are in our own history. And I think it's been really easy for a lot of people, myself included, to not be involved in that history for whatever reason, growing up in a predominantly white community, or being in a situation in school where you just feel like you have to suppress your identity for whatever reason, or you distance yourself and you assimilate in some form or fashion. I think that's just what's happened. And I think is a product of white supremacy, which, yeah. So,
so speaking of history, actually, that brings up something that I was actually, it just spawned on me that this is something that I've been doing lately. So last year, when I got to Denver, I actually joined an organization, a nonprofit called Acell, which is Asian Corporate Entrepreneur Leaders. And one of the things I've learned in this organization is just all the different cultures, the Asian cultures that they're involved in. One of them was they were talking about the history of the Denver race riot. And back in 1880, here in Denver, there was actually a big riot, one of the biggest that happened in downtown Denver. And one Chinese man actually got hung. And so this was a big deal. Chinatown got burned down, all kinds of things like that. So in 1 month coming up, just actually in April, I think it's the mayor is actually apologizing to the Chinese community of Denver. This is like one of the first times it's like happening where they're actually acknowledging that this happened and an apology. And I think there's like there's a plaque that might be getting redone because it had some stuff on it that wasn't acknowledging the death. and the situation that happened back then. So I thought that was very interesting. And again, these are things I've been learning through this organization. So I'm very appreciative that that they are helping to educate myself and hopefully others that don't know anything about the history of that.
Yeah, I just think like I know from my own learning, there's like civil rights starts in, I don't know, with the Civil War, and then goes up to, the civil rights movement in 1965, and then picks up again in 2015 for me. That's just like how my brain has worked. And I'm slowly now filling in the gaps between 1965 and 2015. And a lot has happened. And
Right.
like 2015 only stands out to me because of, for a number of reasons. I guess that's when my memory is telling me that's like really when the Black Lives Matter movement got started. Even though there have been moments and killings and movements and things like, that's just like, but like that huge gap is ridiculous. And to think that like things weren't happening with Asian America, to think things weren't happening with Indigenous America, things weren't happening with Black America in that time is just so, naive and short-sighted of myself. And yet I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I need to think about that. And I heard on a podcast that like when we talk about like the Civil Rights Act and the Civil Rights Movement, for most people, it stops at 1965.
Right.
But like we're still talking about it now. Like it is not a thing that can just go away because we haven't made it yet.
Well, and that's how we're force-fed history, or that's how we're fed history growing up in school. At least for me, growing up in Indiana, specifically talking about Indigenous peoples, we don't learn about like that Indigenous peoples were made up of all of these different tribes, all of these different cultures. Living over here, we learn about Christopher Columbus came over here, they sat down, had dinner, and it was all good. And then slowly, and then I think I can remember maybe one like small paragraph about like the Trail of Tears. So massive displacement. And recently I just read the Indigenous Peoples an Indigenous Peoples history of the United States. And at the end of the day, but we're never, like to your point, Nathan, about this, you said it was the mayor acknowledging what had happened, until we are able to acknowledge and be accountable as a country, as a people, as a society of in America, that the way that we obtained this land, the way we found ourselves here in America, any of us, all of us that are here currently, was based on mass genocide and displacement of in not even one people, but many peoples. Until we're able to acknowledge that, there's no real path forward in my perspective. Just because we were the day before the panel, when we got into Dallas, when we got into Austin, we had a dinner Jerry had organized with a bunch of people, different Asian American creatives and things like that, and people that he knew. Someone like from Michigan Business School, the MBA program was there. Well, we went around and when introductions was, you had to say how you knew Jerry, because that's how everybody 6
degrees of Jerry Wan.
Yeah, 6 degrees of Jerry Wan.
That's funny.
When we were kind of sitting at our two separate tables, Jerry, Dion, Laura, and I were having a conversation, and that's what we were talking about was accountability, and how all of this, everything that's going on right now is a product or a symptom of this unwillingness to recognize and hold ourselves accountable for any and all atrocities that have been committed. That includes people who are descendants of, which is all of us, of the people that have committed such acts and atrocities. And I think that it was just really, it was powerful, because I can have these conversations all day, like reading and writing about it, but to sit there and talk with like other Asian Americans about, this need for accountability, not only within the country itself, but even within our own communities, being accountable to ourselves on who we leave out of the conversation, who we leave off the table. And I think that another thing too, I think Dion said this, And when it comes to getting the seats at the table, it's like, what do you do with that seat? What do you do once you're in that seat to help further or uplift or amplify or support or whatever it is when you have that power? And so I think on this whole topic of like, what now? Where are we? Are we better? Or are we worse? It's real. I honestly think at the end of the day, it's the same. We've made gains in certain areas, but we have lost in certain areas, or we've not moved at all. And I think we find ourselves 1 year removed from one of the most horrific attacks on Asian Americans in this country, still asking the same questions. And to think about it, we've been asking those same questions since 1865 or 1875 with the Page Act. Even before then, we've always been asking ourselves those questions. And until we are able to hold ourselves accountable for any and all of these things, we are going to be sitting in the same spot. And it is encouraging to me that we're doing things like this, that so many people, more people are raising their voices, are utilizing their voices. But to KJ's point, and to Dion's point about how we use this seat at the table, and to KJ's point, where we're lacking in maybe our learning is diving into that intersectionality, diving into the other communities and their histories that we need to be working together with in solidarity in order to find that ourselves in that accountable space. So, yeah, I don't know. That's just, you guys know that I got a lot to say about it sometimes, and I could just talk forever, but I don't know. I don't know where we go from this point, even in the conversation, to be honest. Like, we're here now, and I think that's what we've been with this show specifically. We've always been about uplifting and amplifying. But I guess, okay, let me actually ask you this. I think I have a good question.
He
for
got
this.
there.
I got
he
there.
got there, folks.
What are
Here we go.
What do you think? What do you two think we could be doing better as a show to further this conversation, to better uplift the voices of maybe the people that we haven't uplifted yet? Like, what do you think we could do better as a show in this arena? KJ, I'll start with you since we started with Nathan last time.
I think the thing with our show is we were born out of, maybe this is not entirely accurate, but the way I think of it is our show was born out of the murder of George Floyd. And our show was born in a time when, like, the race conversation and argument and, like, I don't know, just where America was in terms of thinking about race relations, forced us to be like, oh man, this is where we're at. And the rise in anti-Asian hate and the confluence, for me now, the confluence of anti-Asian hate crimes, George Floyd having to wear a mask out in public, living in a super white town, like all of that forced me into being like, oh, I'm Asian, But I think what we set out to do was to celebrate and to enjoy and to relish and to cherish and to love our identities in their full intersectional selves, and to bring guests on to help them and listeners do the same thing, right? To find reasons to celebrate and to find joy and to love who we are, right? Because as adoptees, we so often feel that imposter syndrome. I went to a meetup last night and talked to the president-elect of the Dallas Asian American Bar Association, who herself is half Asian. And we were talking about like that imposter syndrome, and I was like, and she was like, I don't know if I feel Asian enough to be the president-elect. I'm like, yeah, you are. Of course you are. Who's going to tell you you're not? You know what I mean? Like, but that's something that we have to own ourselves. And so I think our show is born out of like, we are here and we are loud and proud and we love ourselves and all of who we are. Right. And I think that that's what stories do. I think that that's why storytelling is so important, is because when you force someone or encourage, depending on how forceful you want to be.
Forcing our listeners to listen
But when
to our show.
when you're able to help someone see a person's humanity, then when tragedy strikes, your heart breaks. Like that's how we gain empathy, is we find reasons to celebrate and to fall in love with people. And then when tragedy strikes them, we are able to empathize and sympathize and do something about, whether it's like working so that situation never happens again, or supporting the person to whom tragedy struck in the moment, or supporting the person and their loved ones to whom tragedy struck in the moments thereafter. Like there are so many ways that we can help, but it starts with seeing each other as human beings, and it starts with empathy. And so for us as a show, for us as listeners, I think it's just a matter of like telling stories, celebrating victories, and being loud about those things. One of the points that came up at the dinner last night was, there are now over 10,000, maybe 11,000. I don't know. There's like way more reports of anti-Asian hate crimes, hate incidents, all those kinds of things. But one argument for that spike in numbers is that Asians are themselves reporting more often than they used to. So it's not necessarily, I don't know, but it's not necessarily that it's happening more often, but maybe just that we're reporting more. And I think that is encouraging to hear that we are finding our voice. And so as adoptees further, like taking our intersectional identities further, it's like, well, let's also continue to find our voice. Let's continue to speak up. Let's continue to give people reason to celebrate and fall in love with us because we're freaking awesome. And then when tragedy strikes, they're like, oh, no, but this person is awesome. This community is awesome. I don't want anything bad to happen with them. Right. And then we're able to galvanize support and galvanize action and galvanize change. But it's because we've made people fall in love with us to begin with. So that's what I would say is the next steps and what we can continue to do. So please love us more than you already do. Okay. Thank you.
let us know what we could do better to earn your love. Wait,
wow. Right? Okay. I don't know.
Got that.
I want it to be organic. That's fine.
How about you? What about you, Nathan? What do you think? Yeah, go ahead.
No, yeah, I loved what KJ said there. That learning through empathy, and I do think that voices, whether it be our voices, the guest voices, other adoptees' voices that we may share on our Instagrams or on Instagrams, as in all of ours, has been great. I think that spreading of awareness is key, because I think a lot of what what people aren't hearing about are these crimes, about the ones that are being committed, about hate crimes or racism, or there's people that are surprised. I had cousins contact me at the beginning of like last year when we were talking about the rise in anti-Asian hate, and they were like, "Oh, really? I hadn't heard that." And again, that I think that awareness of knowing, it is happening and it is still happening, and I think that allows people to have the empathy, like you said, maybe if they see it actually happening, to stand up and say something or call the police, more immediate, because they think, oh, this could be one of those situations. And instead of ignoring it, or instead of just saying, oh, not my problem, kinds of things like that. So I do think our voices, the amount of exposure that is happening, the president speaking about it, not just, ignoring it, like some previous presidents. It's, I think.
Yeah, Obama. Sorry.
So I think that is amazing when things like that happen. And, that's all I can do is hope that people are listening to us, mostly you guys, but sometimes a little bit of me. And
people really come for you.
Sometimes a little bit of me.
They don't come for me. So.
Well, I appreciate that. And I think to your point of like learning through empathy, one of the things that Muna shared, as well as someone from the audience got up and shared a really personal story. And I think what they both shared was when whatever happened to them happened, the people who came to their aid, who helped them, weren't just other Asian American people or South Asian people, but people from within their communities of all different ethnicities, backgrounds, who came up to help them in the immediate as well as that long-term period. And I think that really resonated with me because, you know, there are those instances. There are people out there already who are operating in an intersectional way, who are living and engaging with people outside of their communities to better understand, to better develop that empathy that allows us to find the humanity in each other. And I think it was really beautiful, but also really sad because you don't hear that in every story. And we don't even hear every story to begin with. And so it's really important, as we've touched on, and as KJ put so eloquently, that we develop that empathy by learning about each other and really taking the time to make that and taking the time and making that effort to better increase our knowledge about each other, so that way we can move together in solidarity and as one.
Well, and I think the important thing too, like what struck me about the two South by things that we were able to go to was like I felt like what was being said and who was in the room were misaligned, because to me it sounded like the people who needed to be in the room for what was being said were allies and not the people. Like, so it just felt like a bunch of Asian Americans preaching to the choir.
Sure.
Even in the meetup, even, you know, there was some good stuff later on, but initially I was like, I don't need to hear all this. I already know all of this. You know who does need to hear this though? Some white bosses. You know who does need to hear this is some white allies or some black allies or some, you know, whatever that is. And so, and even last night, you know, we're at this thing. It's hosted by DABA, Dallas Asian American Bar Association. But I was like, I was one of two not lawyers there. Nice. And so people were like, oh, what firm do you have? Like, no, I just showed up as I heard about it on the internet. But it was just like a branding problem. And I think that's why for us as a show, we want to be intentional about making content that doesn't just celebrate adoptees, but also helps our loved ones get involved in the conversation. Right. Because like if our loved ones aren't aware of what's happening to us, then how can they be allies? And if we don't practice having those conversations, then how can they be good allies? And if we don't like practice having like doing those actions in small spaces, you know, maybe it's extended family, maybe it's just like on your way to walking your kids to school, or, you know, whatever that is, like within small communities, then how can you expect to do it in big communities, right? That it takes practice to care, and it takes practice to be an ally. And like we all have places where we can be allies. And so if we're not doing the bare minimum, which I think is just practicing verbal affirmation and like telling your stories and like providing yourself and your time as a safe moment for one other person who is marginalized in a different way than you. If we're not practicing that in the small ways, then we can't really earnestly go and do that in big ways. So I think that's just a call to action for our listeners, for our people who stumble across the show, people who know adoptees, people who care about any marginalized person or community, is practice allyship in small ways so that when the big moment comes, you've already got those rhythms in place.
That's beautiful. I think that's a perfect way to end it. Practicing verbal affirmations, starting small, but starting somewhere, because we can't go anywhere if we don't start. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
And that's the show.
Well, we'll decide on a snack or food item and be right back.
Sure.
Welcome back to the food portion of the Janchi Show.
Whoa.
We are going to do a quick food item here today.
Quickly.
It is Jellylicious. I don't know what else it says on there. I just see the Jellylicious.
Well, it's jelly and delicious.
Hey,
so it makes sense.
Yeah, it's
Good job,
made by Lotte. Again, Lotte, sponsor us. We're eating your product every time. So
Jellylicious watermelon make my mouth real sour.
Unless it's not sour. Who
don't know if
knows?
it's sour or
It
not.
smells like apples.
Yeah.
Really? I can't even
it's-
open it.
Oh, maybe it
it's a
does smell like
pain. It's a
watermelon.
pain to open.
It says
It
open
is
right
It
weird.
says
here.
open, right?
I know, and it's
Mine
not
opened
open
really
still.
easily.
No, it's so
Yours
hard.
opened?
Yeah,
Oh.
look at that.
I'm having trouble now.
It's not sour.
All right, I just ate a mint too, so I don't know how
This
that's
is
going to
not a
affect the
good
flavor.
chaser.
Not
Like,
having it today.
A terrible chaser.
Okay.
You don't
There
like
we
it?
No, I
What?
mean for you.
Oh,
All right. Looks like a fake watermelon.
It looks like a traffic cone.
Oh, it's harder than I thought. It's kind of
it's
like
just it's thick.
yeah, it's like those peach
There's
gummies.
substance to it. It's not like a hollow.
Don't choke.
Whoa.
I can't give you a virtual Heimlich.
That is it's a bad look if I choke on a product. On the show.
It's definitely less than ideal.
Okay, first one, not bad.
No, I mean,
Just
I'm not getting overwhelmingly watermelon though. But then again, is watermelon ever really overwhelming?
Watermelon
the-
concentrate is the last thing on the ingredients list.
I'll say that the green part that's supposed to be like the rind or whatever of the watermelon doesn't taste like that. So I'm gonna have to knock it for that.
Mm.
That was a joke.
I'm happy that it actually has watermelon concentrate in it though.
Well, it also has watermelon flavor. That's higher up the list.
Like, I mean, watermelon Jolly Ranchers.
Don't give these to your kid. May contain milk, soybean, peach, or peanut.
Yeah, I know. May though.
I'll take that risk. He
If it says May,
May.
I'm okay. If it says yes, then no.
Fair.
Oh, I thought you were gonna have a good rhyme for that. If it says
No.
May, then I'm okay. If it says yes, then
Then I say nay.
Then we say
Yeah.
no mess
Oh,
with it.
That's pretty good. With it, he ruined it. You ruined it. All right, I'm
I'm
not
at
eating these.
4.
I'm
don't
not
really
hating
have-
these either. I'm like, I can eat this whole bag right now.
I'm not loving it.
Well,
He's not McDonald's again.
it is not jellylicious to you. How about
What's the
watermelon-licious?
sad version of that? Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. I'm not loving it.
But okay, let's just do ratings because I'm curious what you guys' thoughts are on the flavor.
Oh, let KJ go first.
I think I did it. I think I finally found it in minor key.
Oh, nice.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Wait. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. I'm loving. Nope. Whatever. I'll figure it out
It
later.
was close enough.
I'm going to put it in right here.
Nice.
Okay. I'm giving this like a 2
Two.
out of
Wow.
5. Yeah.
All right, you got to give us a little bit of some reasoning.
The first one wasn't that good. And it was coated in sugar, which was just like, but like not in like a fun crystallized way, just like in a gross crystallizing, like caking almost. It's like caking with a little bit of crunch. That's how like the sugar was for me.
Taking-
Don't love the flavor, but I was like, okay, that's fine. I then proceeded to have 3 more, and now my throat feels gross. Like I feel like I need to have something to clear out the gunk, and the flavor gets worse over time. And yeah, I'm like not doing well after eating all of this. So
Interesting.
Are you sick? Did you just get
no,
sick?
I think I just gave myself a sore throat from all this sugar, and it's
Maybe
not,
you're allergic to sugar.
not good. Maybe you're allergic to sugar. Anyway, so just not that good. I like the flavor's not right for me. It's like a weird kind of gummy. It's not like a traditional gummy. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
All right, 2 out of 5. Nathan?
Wow. That's not gonna change my rating. I'm giving it a 3.75. I can't go to 4 yet. I like it. It's better than better than average. It's not overwhelmingly watermelon to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would actually, I mean, anytime I've ever had a watermelon candy or so, it's like this overwhelming artificial watermelon flavor that I don't even
but
know
I
what
like
I
it.
get, because like watermelon in general is not overwhelming in flavor because it's all water pretty much.
Is that what they call it? Watermelon?
I think, I don't know, it's a clever name, but so the fact that it is not that artificial watermelon that I was hoping it was going to be, I'm like, it's just a gummy. Like honestly, you could give this to me and say what flavor it is, and not tell me, and I'd be like, I don't know.
Mm.
So that's why I give it a 3.75, but it's higher than the average because it's actually pretty tasty. But But again, I like sugar. I like salt. So, that's probably why I like it. My dentist will hate it.
All right.
I'm gonna give it. I was gonna give it a 4, but now as I'm finishing the package.
As you're finishing the package? Are you kidding me? Were you just like...
For the listeners, there was probably... I'd say there was about 15 in here. Maybe
I got 3 left. As I'm finishing it, I think, and listening to y'all's critiques, I'm like, okay, I actually am on board with almost everything y'all have said about it.
Yep.
I think that it's just, I give it a 3.5. It's just very middle of the road.
Mm-hmm.
It's not great. It was solidly good when I first was eating it, but as I've eaten more of them, I'm like, it's just another chewy candy. And that's no knock against chewy candy that I like, but
that's how the chewy candy feels right now.
I'm sorry. Chewy candy, I'm sorry. I think I've been doing a lot of apologizing in our trio shows.
You're apologizing to
you need to get some
trio shows
now.
Yeah.
Get a basket of apples. That's a Korean joke.
Kaja. Anyways, I'm gonna go 3.5. Just not in. It's just I don't know what's bumping it up, but probably all of the things that you said.
Mm-hmm. Wait, bumped it up?
No, I don't know what would bump it up.
Yeah, like I said, watermelon flavor. I think maybe less sugar on the outside, like KJ said.
Maybe a little less sugar. Yeah, because it's getting all over my
watermelon
keyboard or all
jelly.
my laptop.
Meh.
Because I'm taking them out right next to it for some reason, and then bringing it like sweeping around.
I mean, like those peach jelly rings actually have sugar around it too, and the little peach rings.
I think we like those more.
But honestly, just a regular gummy bear, that's the sugar enough. Honestly,
yep.
Why do you have to coat it in sugar too?
Yeah,
all right,
that's
last
what I'm
one.
saying. Gross.
Still 3.5.
Yeah, wolf.
Well, sorry to Patrick's dentist.
I do have to go to the dentist at the end of the month. It's fine.
Patrick, take us out of here.
It's fine.
It's fine. It wasn't great. It was fine. All right. Well, for this upbeat music, I just want to thank everybody who was here today and who listened and tuned to this episode. I feel like we had a really great conversation about some really heavy stuff. So if you want to continue hearing us and listen to us and find us and interact and engage with us, you can reach us at any of the social medias at Janchi Show. We're always accepting emails of any kind. You can send that to janchishow@justlikemedia.com. If you want to leave us a voicemail, we would be happy to play that on the show for you. You can reach that at 972-677-8867. If you want to support the show in any way, we've got multiple ways on our website, janchishow.com. And last but not least, we would really love it if you could go to Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a rating and or a review. It means a lot to us, and it really helps the show in general. As for us personally, you can find me on Instagram at Patrick in the World.
You can find me at NNowalk on Instagram.
Yeah, you can find me at KJ Roki, wherever I want to be found. Also, if you want to be a guest on the show, you can. I don't remember how. I'm pretty sure it's... I know it's on our link tree. Yeah, it's the link in bio on our Instagram. It's probably other places too. But yeah, we'd love for you to be a guest. Doesn't it? Just apply. That's all.
Just apply.
Yeah. Just apply.
We've got some good guests coming.
Just apply, and if you don't hear from us, just wait longer.
We see all of the emails, but we're bad at emails.
Blame me.
So that's where it's at. So
it's all fine.
Yeah. Anyways, can't wait to hear from you. Thanks for listening. Until next week, Janchi. Hey-o.